Hi, welcome to Soul Sense. I'm Mark, and today we're going to talk about an overview of trauma. One definition of trauma is like this. Trauma, the response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causes feelings of helplessness, and diminishes their sense of self and their ability to feel a full range of emotions or experiences. Now, let me just give you two examples of trauma cases that I've worked with. One was a Vietnam vet, and another was a 9-year-old, an adult who had this experience as a 9-year-old, I think starting at 9, when after mom and dad divorced, the dad was supposed to promise to show up to take them for the weekend, and over didn't show up. Both of those are traumas that need resolution, that need peace. And so what are we looking at when we are trying to help someone resolve a trauma? The first thing is just to hear the story. So we're really going to the source. For that 9-year-old, it was sitting there in the window waiting for dad. For that Vietnam veteran, it was maybe that first time that he had to engage the enemy. Or, I remember there were several episodes that, we went to. But you go to the source, or you go to the place where the trauma either originally happened or something that really represents the trauma. For example, it might be with that 9-year-old, it's not the memory of the first time waiting, but maybe it's the last time that they waited. Or it's a particular time that was really important, like a birthday weekend or a holiday weekend, and dad didn't show up. So some of these they're really sad. There's a lot of grieving to go with it too. Or there's fear, or there's shame. So that is a second part that we have to get to, is we have to get emotionally connected and identify the emotions that go with the trauma. Now, sometimes, because of particular trauma, they have separated from the emotions. So it can take some time and even some prayer to help them get emotionally connected. Very often, I'll be working with someone that's talking about their story. They're not connected emotionally. We might call it inappropriate affect, but it's just they're telling the story, but the emotions aren't there. But then, after a prayer or after talking about it for a while, the emotions may start coming in. And that's really essential, because since this has been a heart wound, it has to be a heart healing also. So we go to the source, we help them get emotionally connected, and then a third thing that is essential is to identify what feels true there. For one person, it might be lonely, abandoned, rejected. For someone else, it might be danger, terror, small, powerless. It could be any number of things, but it's essential that we paint that whole picture of what that belief is. Now, once we have those three things in place, that we've went to the source, so they're telling their story, they're connected emotionally, and we've identified what feels true, now we're ready to receive something from God that only God can give. So let me just read to you from Revelation chapter 3, which, believe it or not, is really Jesus addressing trauma. As a matter of fact, he says in Revelation 3:17 to the Laodiceans, "Don't you know that you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked?" Does that not sound traumatic? I think so. But he has an answer for them. He says, if you can just own your neediness, if you can go to the place where you really need me, he says in verse 20, I stand at the door and knock. I tell people he doesn't stand at the door and knock of the self-sufficient room. He stands at the door and knocks of the needy room. So I go into that needy room and I say, yes, Lord, I am naked or poor or miserable or wretched in this place. And I own it, and I connect emotionally. And look what Jesus says. I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends. Intimacy, great intimacy, was represented by having a meal together. Now, we understand that even today, it still is to a great extent. But there was a special place of intimacy in Jesus' day. And he was saying, if you will own that trauma and go to that place where you need me, all you have to do then is listen for my knock, open the door by faith, and invite me into that place. And that is the answer to trauma. And I just want to give you that overview of what we see day in, day out. Whether it's trauma with a little t or trauma with a big T, we see it over and over. And this is what we find consistently brings peace and brings healing. I'll just finish with this one story. That Vietnam veteran came to see me probably 30 years after he had been in Vietnam. And we went to several of these scenes, and he got peace in each of these scenes, some of which you could understand were very horrific. And after probably 4 or 5 hours over 2 days, he came back the next week and he said, Mark, since I came back from Vietnam, I had never slept through the night without waking up with cold sweats. He said, this past week, I've slept like a baby every night. That's peace that passes understanding. It wasn't my brilliant counseling. It was something he received from the Lord when we got to that place to open that door by faith. And that's the key to healing trauma. I just wanted to give you that overview, and I hope this helps give you some insight and maybe plant some seeds. Thanks very much. Remember, you can reach us at SamaritansWell.com.